Welcome everybody to Cycle Jerks Podcast, episode 131. Hope you're all doing well. Dave and I are continuing on with our new format here. How's it going, Dave?
Good, Mike. How are you? Greetings from where are you? Arizona?
Yeah, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Barrett Jackson auto auction.
Selling your baby, huh?
Yeah. It's
1960 Buick.
Yeah. It's bittersweet. It is. I've had it a long time. I got the car in 2006 and just did a full restoration on the car. And then, yeah, it sits a lot. So yeah, it's time to go. It needs to go to somebody that's going to be stoked, take it to car shows and whatever they're going to do with it.
You had your run. You had your run.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool.
Yeah, but it's pretty cool because I haven't been here since 2002. I think it was 2002, but man, it is insane how much bigger it is.
Wow.
And when I sold the last car that I sold here, it was a 3-day event. Now it's 8 days.
Holy shit. Wow.
Yeah, they're going to auction 2,000 cars off in the next 8 days.
You pretty comfortable it'll go?
Oh yeah, it's going to go. It's going to sell on Wednesday. We just don't know what it's going to sell for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no reserve. So
right.
It's kind of a roll of the dice, but they have a tradition here of getting really good values for cars. So we'll see.
Cool.
We'll see how it goes. But
cool.
Yeah.
Hey,
man.
so how do I sound?
Whoa, I was really loud right there.
Yeah, I would just yell. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Whoa. What just happened?
I don't know. All of a sudden my volume just went up on its own.
Anyways, still very loud.
Oh,
very loud.
You're picky, man. You're picky.
Well, I'm concerned about our audience.
Oh, yes. How's that? Better?
Still way loud.
All right. God, this is the same setting it was. What the hell changed? How's that?
Back up a little bit. Let's see. I don't know.
How's that?
This is great podcast, by the way.
I know these guys, our audience will be riveted.
Yeah,
they're sitting there going, "When are we going to tie? When are they going to tie this into bikes?" Enough
enough car talk.
I will actually tie it into bikes, though.
All right.
The reason I brought that up is a shout out to our one of our bigger fans and a cycling buddy, Lon Baker. He's not only he just a down.
Yeah, still way loud.
Wow. How's that?
Yeah, way better.
Okay.
All right.
It went up on its own. I can't.
Okay. All right. You're shouting out Lon Baker. Let's go. What about
Lon Baker? Lon Baker. He's you've ridden with him. He's a gravel nerd, but he's also a tech nerd. And he said, I sound tinny on these things. So he dropped off some the headphones and speakers and all this. So here we go.
The audio equipment that keeps screwing up. Thanks, Lon.
Yeah. Big help.
You do sound better, by the way.
Yeah. All right, cool.
All right.
I don't know why that jumped.
Anybody that's listening regularly probably picked up that we changed things up a little bit with our intro. And we're kind of kicking around these ideas as we go forward with the podcast. Possibly, definitely a new logo. We want to have a new logo and potentially even all things are on the table. We'll consider maybe even a name change. So the podcast, when we first started, it was two other folks and myself, and we went with this punk rock theme. But as the podcast has kind of grown, we just doesn't really fit the nature of the podcast, we feel like. So if anybody that's out there that's really creative, you want to have any input in maybe branding, maybe we stay with the Cycle Jerks name, maybe we consider changing the name. We have a lot of episodes with this name, so we're pretty committed, but at the same time, if something that really fit better, I think we'd consider it. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, let's when all else fails, tell the truth, right? Too. Somebody told us they didn't like the name, and so
we've had some feedback like that.
Yeah, mostly positive. So who knows? But if someone's offended by it, then let's or doesn't like it, or let's consider. There's no guarantees we change, but that's what we're doing. We're listening to our subscribers.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, if you got anything to say on it, shoot us a DM on IG. That's probably the best way to get your point across.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get back to you and let you know.
Yeah. The other thing too, on that same top, that along the same lines is, I think we're doing a pretty good job in the diversity of what we're talking about, right? We got
Mhm.
some road bike guys, we got amateur guys, we had One Arm Willie on, and we've got some, I think, some cool guests lined up. But hey, if you guys, there's topics you guys want us to cover, or somebody that would be a good guest, um, yeah, let us know about that too, and we'll reach out and see if it's a good fit.
Okay. Yeah, good suggestion. So the other thing, along with the new intro, we also are trying out this new um, banter before we have our guests come on. So lots of new stuff. We're just trying to push the envelope a little bit and see if we can maybe cover a little bit more in this preamble before we get the guest on. And
Yeah.
Dave and I ride locally. I know a lot of you, are cyclists. So, and then it also gives us a chance to shout out our sponsors, which
Yeah.
now we're in week 2 of sponsors.
New sponsor day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
yeah, you got to check this guy out. So the new sponsor is Phil's Cookies, Phil Guyman fame, who was obviously, if you're pro cyclist, ex-pro cyclist, and if you follow the tour, Phil, who is in the midst of his worst retirement ever. He rides his bike, does a lot of social media stuff, and sells cookies.
Yeah.
So apparently, that I guess the story goes that this was his guilty pleasure when he was a rider. He would always racing and training. He would check out the local cookie scene, and people started actually sending him at the finish line, sending them their favorite cookies from all over the world. So, anyways, he went and started his own cookie company. It's awesome for a lot of reasons, but the first is this is like hassle-free baking. I got some. They send you this little bag. You add butter and an egg, and you boom, in 15 minutes you got a dozen cookies. So it's simple. It's all pre-mixed. You don't have to do anything except the egg and the butter and turn on the oven, right? Great flavors, chocolate chip, double chocolate chip, oatmeal, pumpkin spice. They got a vegan option, really cool. Subscription options for getting a monthly pre-delivered. But that's the cool thing. They're delicious. But the second cool thing, and we put this on social media a while ago when it was National Cookie Day, which I didn't know there was such a thing, but Phil reminded me that there is. $1 from each one of his bags of cookies goes to No Kid Hungry to fight childhood hunger and poverty in the U.S. They've been doing this for 30 years. The most amazing thing is they can turn that $1 into 10 meals. So, and if you go to No Kid Hungry, they'll tell you how they do it. It's just amazing. So, anyways, um, we got Phil's Cookies. He's on board. Welcome, Phil. Thank you for your support. I encourage you to buy them. We've got the Snickerdoodle ones. Awesome, delicious. And yeah, I don't mind saying, $1 goes a long way to help the hungry. So
Definitely. Yeah. It's really cool what Phil's done there,
yeah,
and pulling in No Kid Hungry. And No Kid Hungry is really a cool organization. They do a lot of cycling related events, and yeah, they did good work. And Phil's got a lot of content out there. He was on the podcast all the way back on episode 85. So if you'd like to listen to his chat with Dave and I, that's available. So
yeah.
check it out.
I still put that up there as one of our top ones. I mean,
Mhm.
aside from the fact that he was drinking whiskey and I was drinking wine, it was, but there we go. His retirement, the whole idea of why he started chasing KOMs,
Right.
racing clean. There's a lot of good stuff in that chat, I thought, anyways.
No, I completely agree. Yeah, and so as the KOM hunter, I know he takes a little bit of heat because he was nabbing some KOMs, but when you find out the motivation behind it, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a
And
good dude. And
I'm glad he did it.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. So I see you've been spending a little bit of time on the old Zwifter.
So I'm going to blow your mind. Are you sitting down, right?
I am.
All right, listeners. I think there's one other time in my life that I've ever been more than an hour, and I hit the hour mark and I'm just done. Right.
Uh-huh.
I do your Everesting thing, where they say like you should do one more lap just to make sure that
Uh-huh.
Strava doesn't jip you. So I
Uh-huh.
always go about an hour and a minute so that I don't come in at 59 minutes,
Like who cares anyway?
Yeah,
But go
I know
ahead.
I
Yeah.
do. But yeah, so another friend of the pod, Eric from Dutch Diesel, the forecast was shitty. And
Yeah.
so he did a meetup, and there were about 5 of us on there, and we got to the top of the radio tower on Zwift after the epic KOM, and it's an hour and 40 something minutes, and we descended down to the bottom, and the ride ended at 29 miles, or an hour and 45 minutes. I know that by your standards, Mike, like your 4-hour thing the other day is no big deal. But I swear to God, we had it on Discord. So while we were riding, we were all talking as well. I swear, like I could have gone easily another hour, another half hour. Just like Sue came back from a walk, she sticks her head in there and her jaw drops. She's like, "You're still on that thing?" And I couldn't believe it myself. I couldn't believe it myself. If I had been alone, I would have stopped at an hour and one.
I could tell you're feeling very proud of yourself
I'm
right now.
stoked. I would do it again. I would do it again. I can't believe I'm saying that. Maybe the novelty wears off.
Uh-huh.
But how do you do 4 hours? And don't
It,
just say it's a book, an audio book. Like, because I listen to a podcast, but I'm still at an hour. I'm like, I'm done.
well, I get caught up in the climbing challenges, and so but I'm watching Netflix a lot of times. So I'll just put my phone there. I got into this series, it was called Caliphate,
Okay.
on Netflix. It was about this woman in Syria, and it was really good. 8 episodes. I think it was 8 episodes. But so you get something like that going, and I can binge watch it while I'm, sweating away. And yeah, it kind of keeps me going. Actually, this last Saturday, I was kind of done, but I was 2 episodes away from finishing Caliphate. I was kind of on the hook for Caliphate. I was really engaged in it. And so then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to do another lap.
All right, I guess. But what happens if I do that? If I start watching something like that, then all of a sudden, like I find out, I start to like I'm not really going at it. You know what I mean? Like I'll get
Yeah.
absorbed, and all of a sudden I'm pedaling, but I'm certainly not. And maybe that's you don't always have to go. You don't always have to hammer, but
I
I
think
find like
I'm the other way. I find like if I just take my mind off of it, like I'll just look over as I'm going and I'll be like at 3.4 watts per kilo.
yeah,
And that's pretty good. I'm happy
yeah,
with that, as just a regular pace, you
uh-huh,
know, and then, but yeah, if I'm fully engaged in my avatar and watching the whole thing, then it's different for sure.
right,
But, like you said, not everyone's, a KOM quest.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Especially when you're on it for 4 hours. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, I'll just gotta get through it.
yeah.
But,
It seems kind of nuts to me.
yeah, but
What?
I find just taking your mind off of it, you know, thinking of it, like I just think of it as like I'm just putting in work, just putting in work. I'm not really paying attention to all the there are times where I am fully engaged in all that Zwift has to offer, but most of the time I would say that I'm not totally engaged. I'm just putting in work.
Yeah, maybe that's the way I got to look at it, because I don't. I'm always looking, as you know me. Like if okay, I know I'm behind where I was on my last ride, so I started worrying about the number and not just
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
contra which is contradictory to what Matt Fitzgerald told us, right? So for
Yeah,
me, I'm always hitting it hard. You don't always have to hit it hard, 80-20.
that's right. Yeah. And I
So
know like there's a lot of haters out there for our virtual training. I have a good friend of mine up in Oregon that just rides me like a pony about it. And I used to feel kind of guilty about it, like, like I'm just taking the easy way out. Um, but and certainly you're not in the elements. So that's a big part of the appeal. And it's hard to beat the efficiency also.
yeah,
So if you've got 2 hours, you can, for me, I care about elevation. So you can bang out a bunch of elevation in 2 hours. Um, whereas if you go outside, it's just going to take you a lot longer to accumulate that elevation.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
to that end, I wasn't going to actually disclose this, but now that we brought it up, I've actually been toying with getting back on a training regimen,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And I've been checking out the plans, but I think I would do it only on Zwift because I know, like okay, I want to go out and do an interval on Camino Tasahara. I'm going to get a stoplight, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
And so I am literally think that's the only place I would do it for exactly what you just said is the efficiency. I
Mhm.
mean, we managed it before in the 6:15 days, but I would think it'd just be a matter of efficiency, and they've got the workout already, you know, on the thing. So I'm thinking
Yeah.
about doing it anyways. I don't know. We'll
It's
see.
not about them not having appropriate workouts because the workouts on there are as legit as they come.
Yeah.
The other thing too is like a lot of cyclists struggle with motivation. And you know, I find like if I just like come winter time, it starts raining, it's just nasty. I ride early, so it'll be in the 30s and raining. If I just go on the trainer in those scenarios, as soon as I get a little bit of daylight and I can actually ride outside again, it's like there's this reinvigoration you have for the whole
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah.
You're not just doing work. Now it's like, oh, now I'm getting all these other experiences. So yeah, I think there's something to that for people that want to do, to want to ride year round. It can be a burnout for a
Yeah.
lot of people. You were talking
Yeah.
about it a couple weeks ago about how you're
Yeah.
struggling with the
Yeah.
burnout. Yeah.
But and that is one thing, mixing it up, right? So yeah, you can get burned out if you just cooped up inside all day. Then you get a sunny day, you go outside, it's a whole different world. A couple days outside, then I don't mind coming back and getting on a trainer. So
Hmm.
hey, so
So,
I got an old man question for you though.
uh-oh.
Yeah. So on your this is another thing. I know Dan was here, he'd be going like this, and you're gonna go get over it.
Uh-huh.
What on your road bike? What is your gearing ratio?
Oh, I should know that off the top, but I don't know. I've got the SRAM mid, whatever that is.
Oh, you got SRAM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have the SRAM mid, and then I have I think it's a 28 on the rear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have the mid compact one, so I'm 50. What's that? 52, 30, not 52, 36. Shit. How come I don't know this? I don't work in a bike shop anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
50,
Yeah. 5236.
52, 36, and I have a 28 in the back. And I'm just finding it like I'm riding with everyone else, and I go, what do you got? They go, oh, I got a 30. What do you got? I got a 32. And I just maybe I'm not in as good a shape, or maybe I'm just getting older, but like it's harder to get up these grades on the 28. And I was thinking about going to a 30. And so I was riding with a guy on Wednesday, and he's one of the fastest, strongest guys around. And I go, what do you got? He goes, yeah, I got a 30 on the back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You see it a lot more now.
yeah,
And I always remember when we were doing that dirty summit, we were riding with these small clusters on the back, and Dan was just smoking us.
yeah,
And he just called us a bunch of old dummies.
yeah,
And yeah, and that kind of, yeah, the acceptance of the larger cassettes now. And hey, if you can, yeah, it's only benefiting you.
Yeah.
The goal is to
Yeah.
go as fast as you can. So
Yeah.
yeah, anything you can
Just,
change up on the gearing side of it to help
yeah.
you with that.
And again, maybe after I go through my training plan, it won't be necessary, but I just find that, 10% isn't, is harder now than it was before. And I noticed it most on Alp to Zwift, like
Yeah.
so
Well, yeah, and like that, we were talking about that climbing portal. That climbing portal.
oh fuck yeah.
And the thing that's cool about it though is it keeps changing. So it's like different all the time.
All right.
And so yeah, I appreciate it because it mixes it up because I've just been riding this Alp and the
I
Mont Ventoux and
Yeah.
you get the Alp it's hard and it's
Yeah.
and it's just like the same thing over and over again. So the climbing portal is kind of cool and in that regard because it just mixes things up. But yeah, sometimes the climbing portal is like only 900 feet or 1400 feet or something, and other times it's much bigger. It just
Yeah.
depends on which where it's at the given time.
Did I
I haven't.
see on there? I'm sorry. Did I see on there that Old Wollonga Hill was an option?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really looked. I
Uh,
haven't done any like digging around on about the climbing portal itself. But yeah, there's always new stuff all the
yeah.
time. They had the Tourmalet, that was killer.
Okay.
Um, and what was the other one that I just did that was super hard? I can't remember. Um, but when you go into the portal, they have these four options, and I think it's like I forget exactly the terminology, but there's like less than, and then a little bit more, and then the actual, and then there's the heroic version.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
heroic version's locked. So you have to do the actual version to unlock the heroic version.
Okay.
So yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
I'll
another
give it a
gaming
try.
gaming element to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, I mentioned Old Wollonga Hill. Have you watched the tour down under?
No, but I've been seeing the results. Looks like it's pretty exciting, and I know the Giant team's doing pretty well.
They did pretty well. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was and that's kind of why another thing that got me thinking about this gearing. So they were doing Old Wollonga Hill. Uh, it was a Saturday, so I think I was watching it, and the guy that was leading out, your man, Simon Yates, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Simon Yates.
Simon.
Yeah.
This kid, this kid took off. This kid took off. I had never seen a cadence as high. Like I don't even think Chris Froome's cadence was as high. And this guy took off. Was supposed to be his leader's man. Yates couldn't hold his wheel.
Oh wow.
It was amazing. And I was just again to my point. I I couldn't spin that way because I just I'm not a pro rider, number one, but I
Yes.
think
And
most
you're in your
importantly,
60s.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Hi, Kendra.
yes, we're joined now
Hi,
by our guest today. Uh
Welcome.
yeah, welcome Kendra.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, we have with us today is Kendra Ramsey. She's the executive director of California Bike Coalition, and you can find them online at calbike.org. So yeah, thanks for joining us. We're excited to kind of share with our audience what it is that calbike.org is all about and what you spend your days doing. But usually we like to start off with where'd you grow up and how did you get involved with the bicycle?
Because yeah, looking through your resume, it's pretty much transportation's all you've done, and pedestrians and bikes, and so you've been doing this a while. So tell us about
Yeah,
the how you fell in love with it.
yeah. So I grew up in Sacramento, California, state
Oh,
capital. When I was young, the downtown area where I grew up had been sort of disinvested and folks had moved out to the suburbs, but it remained a super walkable, bikeable community with fairly decent transit, which was good for me because my family did not have a car. So we did everything, when I got switched to a school across town, I rode the light rail. We either took the bus, walked, or did light rail for everything in our
Okay.
day-to-day lives. And so it just always has been something that transportation has been something that has always meant opportunity, and obviously connection to me. And so kind of when I went off to start my career and was interested in how to make our communities better places, um, how to help connect folks from all walks of life to opportunity. Transportation was just a really, obvious fit for me, and helping folks sort of get to where I was able to be as a kid, in a low income household, but able to go all kinds of places throughout Sacramento, under my own power.
Well, yeah. Was there a switch that came that said it's transportation, bus, rail to bike? Like, was there some point that you fell in love with the bike, or you just happened, or you're not in love with the bike, you just work for Cow Bike? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah. No, I understand. So, I remember taking my training wheels off and doing just riding in a circle, and loving how it being on a bike is just sort of freeing. I have always um, felt that the bike was great for transportation. I will say that, I'll admit I wasn't really a recreational bicyclist until a few years ago, until the pandemic. I primarily, as an adult, again, living in downtown Sacramento, I rode my bike to work every day, partly because driving just would drive me crazy. Cars are expensive. Living in households where, we might have a car, but you'd share it with another person. And riding my bike to work just always seemed like the most obvious, logical way to get there. And, when I started my career, I worked for an affordable housing policy organization, as they were starting to think about land use and transportation. And I, started out from a broader land use perspective, and really just saw biking and walking and transit as all sort of linked. Some of us use all three. Some of us may only use one. Everyone's a pedestrian at some point in their day, whether they drive, take a bike, or transit. And so I feel, even as a bike advocate now, that being a pedestrian is also kind of a critical component of our work, for that reason. But, I really feel like you can get so many places on a bike, in, for the most part, a shorter amount of time. And it's, it just creates an opportunity to get more things with you, whether it's going grocery shopping, carting. I'm about to start carting my 1-year-old around on the bike, which is just so exciting after needing to drive her to daycare for the past year, which has just slowly eaten parts of my soul away. Being kind of forced, because she was just not, they do not recommend it until a certain age.
Right.
And so, yeah, really, I think bicycling provides a lot of opportunity for folks. And, that's why I came to Cal Bike, and why I'm very excited about the work that we do.
All right.
Yeah. Well, Dave and I are both, sorry, Dave, we're both in the East Bay. So Dave's in Danville, I'm in Livermore, but I go to Sacramento for work, as I'm outside rep. And I just really admire Sacramento's cycling culture. And I think a lot of it stems from, all the cycling opportunities that are within reach, whether you be in the city, you get, the river trail, or, there's a bunch of different off-road riding scenarios that are not super hilly, so they become a lot more accessible for a recreational rider. Where we're at in the East Bay, there's not a ton of cycling infrastructure. It's not on the same level. There are some good examples, but it's not as developed as Sacramento. And our off-road riding is just very challenging, which is great for a couple of knuckleheads like Dave and I, but for anybody that's a recreational rider, it's just very challenging to ride off-road in the East Bay.
But it's interesting that, oh, by the way, Kendra, at the end of this, there's a special award that you get if you can guess where Mike is broadcasting from in his.
Come on now.
He's in the bathroom of his hotel in Arizona. So.
Amazing.
That's why the acoustics are so good.
Oh, wow. Okay. Maybe I need to relocate at home.
Yeah. But actually what Mike just said and what you said is honestly speaks to the heart of why I was so anxious and so to get you on and so happy that you
Mhm.
agreed to come on, because what I'm trying to, how I found out about you guys is on LinkedIn. All right. I'm currently unemployed, looking for a job, and I
Mhm.
start firing up the LinkedIn thing, and I just want to be in the bike industry, right?
Mhm.
In some way, shape, or form. So I'm spending, and it's my job search is that. And when I get into these forums on there, frankly, it seems like Europe is kicking our ass, excuse me, in terms of people, in terms of what they do for bike infrastructure, and then the adoption level. And this will take me a lot of different places. But now you say like Sacramento is good, but to Mike's point, they've done a lot of stuff down here. We've got sharrows, they've got improved bike lanes, but I can't say it's a biking community other than from a recreational standpoint. So is it Europe? Is it a big city thing? Is it we're just stupid and don't see how easy it is and how convenient it is? And so that you see where I'm going. That's why.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I think, you know, CalBike, what we're really about is advocating for equitable, inclusive, and really communities where bicycling helps enable everyone to lead healthy and joyful lives. And so part of that is making sure that, you know, from the folks that everyone might think of when they think cyclist, like someone in a jersey on a really speedy bike, all the way down to, you know, a small child on, you know, whether it's a balance bike or training wheels or whatever they their parents choose for them, but really to create places where everyone can ride. And I would say from that perspective, like I don't want to be on the record saying Sacramento has done it all right, because you know, I'm thinking about a woman last week who was hit and killed, a place that I passed when I take my daughter to daycare, right? It's somewhere a block from a
Dang.
former office of mine, you know, where we have, it's right next to our brand new class 4 protected bikeways. And yet, you know, full daylight, she was still hit and killed last week. And so I think, you know, one of the things that we all still need to work on, even where, you know, I might think it's fairly easy for me to bike here. There's still a lot of work to do, and a lot of it is getting those places where it is safe for and comfortable for everyone to bike, not just folks who are outfitted, have all the lights and bells and whistles and everything. And I think that's one thing that Europe has gone more towards than many cities in the U.S. That, you know, a lot of their planning and design has really focused on getting facilities out there that, you know, someone can take their children on to go to school and come back, that, you know, an older adult might be able to get their, you know, kind of steel frame bike, very sturdy, put a basket on the front and go pick up their groceries, their meal for the evening, and not really have to worry about mixing with cars and that sort of thing. There are a lot of other structural differences between the US and Europe, and that doesn't mean that we can't get to better bike facilities. It just takes a little bit different thinking. A lot of our cities, Sacramento is a great example of this, are very spread out and less dense, right? Like I'm lucky to be able to bike and walk places in Sacramento because I live in the central city. If I, you know, there are a number of smaller suburbs that are probably more similar to, say, Danville, around Sacramento, that, you know, that may not be the case for folks, especially if they're trying to commute, or, you know, maybe their kids go to a school not quite close to their house. So it can cause a lot of challenges to get from place to place by bike, especially when there are high speed roads in the middle of those communities. Our land use patterns that, you know, from the post-war period through maybe the 90s were moving from that traditional grid street network, like it is where I live, out to, you know, cul-de-sac communities with dead end roads that, you know, sort of facilitate an insular sort of feel to a neighborhood, but necessitate going a much longer distance to get from point A to point B. We do often, one thing we have that Europe doesn't have is we have quite a few wide roads. Engineers designed roads for many years to allow very frequent, very high speed movement of cars from place to place. And that means now that we're thinking about, now that many of us are thinking about adding more facilities for people on bikes, that there is some roadway space that can be repurposed into those separated protected facilities where people on bikes can have their own little space, that they're not mixing with a high speed vehicle. They're not concerned that that grandma or, their child are going to accidentally get onto the road, or, they're not concerned that, as, some of us who may have learned how to use clip-in pedals in the last decade and are not super great at them yet, they're not as concerned that if they just randomly fall over, they're going to be seriously injured by a car.
Right.
So those are, but I think the other, the big piece is political pressure, and having people believe that bicycling is a valid form of transportation, that it is, something that can help with our health, it can help with, combating climate change and getting us to where we need to be, and that we need to be investing. It comes down to money. We need, the interstate highway system took a great deal of money to develop and to make, car culture what it is today. And we need an equal investment in getting those roadways retrofitted so that people can get places that they're going on bike safely.
You brought something. I'm going to circle back to something but while we're on it, because that's another thing that I learned through these forums, which is in many ways, it's like counterintuitive. It took a while to sink in. You're talking about repurposing the roads, right? Because they're building wider roads. So I think the knee-jerk reaction is, well, we build the wider road and it'll be safer for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, what they're finding is that it creates more danger for cycling. Correct me if I'm wrong, because wider roads mean people are, there's no incentive. They're not getting as many traffic jams, so there's less incentive to get out of their car, and then it's a wider road, so they travel faster, and ultimately it's counterproductive, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Or counterintuitive. So on some level, the answer is actually to take away roads. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So, many studies have shown that, picture a wide road, picture somewhere it's there's 45-mile-an-hour speed sign and it's a straight road. The lane, you could kind of veer back and forth. You shouldn't, but, and you would still be within your lane. And what that, really the psychology there is, someone who's driving a car doesn't feel any pressure from things outside of their lane. And so they feel safer just going, going the speed that feels comfortable to them, which can inch up and up from what's posted on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And, all the cars next to them are doing the same thing, because everyone feels like they're in their own little channel, and there's nothing sort of encroaching on that space to make them feel cognizant that other folks are around. Where when you introduce narrower lanes, the cars next to you might be closer. Maybe there are some street trees on your side that are sort of visually, creating that sense of boundary to where you're driving, that you naturally get a little more apprehensive, and not in a way that is necessarily scary, but that you sort of are more attuned to, okay, I'm in an environment where I need to make sure I'm paying attention. I'm concerned that I might need to stop because I'm in maybe an urban area where there might be folks out, there might be people getting out of their cars, there might be people crossing the street, and I need to be ready for those things. And so, really narrowing lanes and kind of forcing that perception of I'm in a place where other people are traveling really helps folks adhere to speed limit better, slows down traffic overall. And, many studies have shown that the slower, if somebody does get into a crash, whether it's the person in the car or, very importantly, the person outside of the car, whether it's a bicyclist, pedestrian, motorcycle rider, whatever it is, that they're less likely to have a serious injury or die if they are hit if the car's going at slower speed. So those are all kind of ways that narrowing lanes can be very helpful. Similarly, it is counterintuitive, but many studies have shown that when you add lanes, you actually increase congestion. So,
Yeah,
the argument is always, let's add some lanes so that there isn't gridlock on, whatever street or highway. But that it's called induced demand. And after a few years, there have actually been studies, some of which done by the state of California, and UC Davis has done a lot, UC Berkeley, really showing that you have a few years where traffic goes down, and then things sort of equalize, more folks start going that way, and the traffic increases and actually exceeds what it used to be. And so those are two kind of counterintuitive engineering planning concepts that may not make sense to the average person, but the data is there.
Yeah,
I'm writing that down. Induced demand. That's our soundbite, Mike. There it is.
Well, I like the idea of narrower lanes. I do feel like a lot of people, obviously a lot of people are distracted driving, and I'm guilty of it too at times. Something, yeah, I'm not proud of it, but sometimes it does happen. And what, if the lane is tight, I just feel like you're going to be less likely to look at a text that comes in, or take your eye off the road. You're going to have to pay more attention, and I think that would really benefit everybody. But you talked about car culture, and it's interesting because that's the thing that I've always thought about the United States is bike culture. And the difference between, there's so many differences between Europe and the United States, but one of the big differences is cycling is viewed in a much different light in Europe than it is in the United States. And I always felt like, how do you get somebody that's driving their SUV, they got to stop at Starbucks and they get their coffee, and then they drive to work, and then, oh, these people on bikes are in my way. Gosh, what's the matter with them? That's like a big culture thing. But I never really thought about it from a standpoint of financial investment. I always thought about it from, how are we going to change the people? And for whatever reason, I just didn't think maybe it's a financial issue. Whereas if the government really did invest and made a similar investment like they did with the roadways, that could really change the Americans' idea of getting around, the general Americans' idea of getting around. Dave and I are both in suburbs. One thing I notice is, like, when I go to cities like Sacramento, I also go to Berkeley, I've serviced San Francisco, and even Santa Cruz. These markets, people use the bike, and it's a very much a recreational product, and it is also a utilitarian product. And some people use it both ways in those markets, but a lot of them use it just as a utility. And I think for, like you said, the cul-de-sac kind of mindset, getting that person out of their SUV and onto a bicycle to try to ride across town, that's a big challenge.
But is it a chicken and an egg and technology thing? Because, like, so if they did make that investment, would it happen? Or hopefully, and maybe we don't know until we do it. But I guess, and it comes back full circle, is why I actually raised this, is I opened a bike shop. We were, less than a quarter of a mile from the shop. So I got rid of one car, and, my wife wasn't very happy about it, but now we have one car. I no longer have the shop, but I have not got a second car. And to me, what I learned from that experience is that I can go to the grocery store and load up on a grocery store on my bike and get back. I don't miss it, right? I don't miss the car, except on a rainy day when I've got to go somewhere, and I had to drive my wife, whatever. And my point, so I've found how functional I can be. I can get to the grocery store. I can, go over to a friend's house. I could do whatever. But now you got all these people that through the pandemic are now working from home. So they're probably in very similar situations like me. Okay. pretty sure most of them haven't gotten rid of their second car. They still got it. And you know what I mean? And so,
Yeah.
and for some, you raised a good point, right? Like if I work in Danville, it's really difficult to me to think of me, you know, commuting to Palo Alto on my bike, right? Which is what some people do. But I'll wrap this up, this little tirade up a little bit. But like my wife, she works in Walnut Creek, right? So she has an e-bike, and when she rides it, you know, forget the physical and mental health, it really only adds about 30 minutes to her commute, right? On a given day. And so I think everyone has an hour in a day, and not everyone can do it. She's very fortunate, but I would submit that there's a ton of people that live in Livermore, work in Pleasanton, but they don't commute by bike, right? So that's my point, right? Is it egg, chicken, or
Mhm.
will like the e-bike change all that? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think there are a couple of answers to that. You know, one thing, people are comfortable with what they know, right? They understand how to get from point A to point B, all the places they need to go in their car. And you know, a lot of times people might be interested in picking up a bike and doing either their commute or some of their errands on a bike, but maybe they go out the same route that they usually take their car and they find that it is very uncomfortable because they go on the route that is the quickest and quickest for the car. And maybe there's a lot of traffic, maybe there's no separated or marked bike lane, and they say never again. And so I think you know that first step of not thinking about the bike in the same way that you would think about your car, and just you know that little bit of pre-planning into okay, what's the best route for me and my bike. It's probably not the same as the car. I think that there's a big role for our local governments to play in that. You know, I know that here in Sacramento they have spent a lot of time, you know, recently over the holidays, parking meters are free, so you can go shopping in our central city, which,
Yeah.
you know, I know our local businesses are very excited about, but if they spent the same amount of time and, you know, resources publicizing, here's how you get on your bike. And actually, having said that, our local public works department does do a "Are you new to biking for transportation" course that they offer, so I shouldn't
That's
use them
cool.
as a bad example. But I don't think it gets as much publicity as it may use as many resources, but I don't think it gets as much publicity as the free parking meters.
Okay. There
And
you go.
so, you know, local governments can have these courses where they say, here's how, you know, here's how you can safely get on your bike and go do your commute or go do your errands. A lot of our local bike clubs do the same thing, whether it's run, you know, out of a shop or, you know, in Sacramento, we have the Sacramento Area Bicycle Advocates that do a lot of programming around how to tune up your bike, how to make sure you're safe riding, lots of different skills, and really helping introduce people to be comfortable on their bike. I think those are a couple ways because you know, it can be daunting to try a new transportation mode. You maybe know where you're going, and then suddenly the bike lane disappears and you're out in the middle of traffic. And it's even if you're an able-bodied, you know, you're good at cycling, you still might be a little apprehensive to do that again if you have that experience, or you know, you have someone a little road ragey next to you. It can be a bad experience. So I think there's a lot of education and sort of encouragement programs that can go a long way to helping with that culture shift. And you know, I think another way is um, getting some of that education out to drivers as well. And that, you know, we've seen it in our school zones where cities are allowed to decrease speed limits around schools now, more so that school zones are safer, you know, encouraging better driving behavior. And really, it's about predictability. Everyone kind of understanding what the other folks on the road are going to be doing so that they can sort of stay in their own spaces and, you know, help everyone get to where they're going safely.
That's a
Yeah,
good point. Go ahead, Mike. I'm
I was
sorry.
going to say, you know, I was thinking about this, you know, like, are there, I would think like corporate initiatives where
Mhm.
you get these companies to maybe incentivize their employees on some level to ride to work. Is that something that that Cal Bike works on, or is that provided from another?
Yeah. Yeah, their Calbike currently isn't working on anything like that. So the broad category of that type of program is called transportation demand management. I My prior career, I was in the private sector doing active transportation planning work for about 8 to 10 years, and I worked with a lot of private companies as well as campuses and other areas where they really think about how folks need to get to where they're going for their work or their school day, and what types of information do they need to do that successfully. In many cases, these private employers either are required in some way to reduce the amount of single occupant vehicles, so people driving alone to work on their campuses because of state environmental regulations, or maybe there's just not enough parking for everyone to get there, right? And so they come up with a suite of programs. There are lots of the state of California here in Sacramento, one of the biggest employers, they subscribe to a number of programs. A lot of the big corporate campuses, like your Apple, your Google, a lot of big companies have them as well, where they have inside resources that help connect folks to, okay, we might have showers on site, we have lockers for your things. I worked at a couple places where my organization didn't have those facilities, but the building we were in did. And it's really about letting folks know, here's what you can access as an employee or as a student, or whatever your role is, and here's how we're supporting that transportation journey. And another big sort of related policy area is parking subsidy. A lot of employers, whether actually monetarily by helping pay for parking or by providing free parking on site that they've paid to have built, are encouraging folks to drive to work. Or if you buy a monthly parking pass, you have no incentive financially to choose another mode when it makes sense for you. Maybe I commute to a city, like you both were saying, that's 15-20 minutes away, but it might be challenging for me to ride my bike every day. Like I said before, I have a 1-year-old. What if I need to pick her up? But um, if you have a policy where, okay, if you only come and park 2 days a week and you use other modes, maybe there's some sort of way that's accounted for in how you're paying for your transportation, whether that's transit, taking transit, going by bike, or parking, because all of those really are financial decisions on the part of the agency or the company. And we really encourage that there are really active thinking about how to help people make those shifts and make driving by themselves not the automatic, the easiest choice, and really make those other choices more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a very much related note, one of the things you said in the beginning was connected to, they're all connected. Like everyone's a pedestrian, everyone's a cyclist, and then mass transit, right? And there's a great one, right? So you think about all the people that could possibly ride their bike to a BART station to
Mm.
get to it. And yet what they keep doing, at least in my opinion, is they keep making bigger parking structures and can't seem to come up with a solution how to safely lock your bike.
Well, so I have a retailer, Alameda Bicycle, and the owner there, he started developing these things called bike stations. And he started with just one, and it was partially like a retail support where they would do repairs and assemblies for the retail store, but they also stored bikes for commuters that wanted to ride their bike to BART and then take the BART train. And now I think he has 13 of them. I'm probably butchering that. I'm not sure how many he has, but I know he extends all the way to Los Angeles now. So these stations, they still do basic repairs, but the main gist of it is just bike storage. So if you,
But and that's great. That's awesome. But that's not a Caltrans thing. That's not a BART
it's
system, right?
subsidized. It's subsidized on
Oh, is
some
it?
level. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know the total inner workings of it, but I know that he is getting subsidized on some level. And and he's not in that space all by himself either. I know that in other markets, there are other people that are in that space.
Yeah.
So,
I just
so
know
there
up
is some,
along my corridor, there are, these cages that you can put your bike in, but it's not like there's an overabundance of them, and again, I see them right along the Dublin corridor, just building these massive parking structures, right?
I
So
think it's probably the suburbia element to it. You
yeah,
know, we're still in suburbia and the bike is just not,
that's why I'm trying to change
you know,
that. I'm on a mission
yeah,
to change.
Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah, and
Well,
when those resources are available, making sure people know about them, right?
yes,
Making that information, it's right on the, right on the website when you go to see when your train might be coming, or right in their app or whatever. Did you know you could ride your bike here? And
yep,
here's how you access that. Like, I know it was um, the Amtrak station in Sacramento. We have these bike link lockers, but it was, I found out because I'm in the transportation sector. I found out that they were coming because of that, because I heard about the press conference when they opened. And so I got myself a card, but I had to wait for it to come in the mail. And then I, have a account online that I have to go reload, right? It's just, it can be a process that people aren't aware. They might see the locker and say, well, how do I even access that? And so
Right.
getting that information out as proactively as the other information is important to help support people doing that.
Okay.
definitely.
All
Yeah.
right, let's talk about the other thing that grinds my gears is and I don't know if I should. I have a whole. By the way, no pressure. We usually just wing it, but I have a whole list of questions for you. So, um, but what about? Are you guys involved at all in getting in finding and incentivizing people to ride bikes to school at all? Is that because that's another thing I see these long lines of SUVs from people that have
Mm-hmm.
just come out of a neighborhood. And I think you raised one good point, which is part of it is finding a different way to get there. And it's something that I take for granted because I ride all the way. And I can imagine that somebody driving their kid to school doesn't know about the past. So they feel like, oh, I've got to put this kid out on a busy road, and maybe they don't. But I don't know. It's just another thing. I see these long lines of cars just idling. And I know in fairness, 3 or 4 kids might jump in it. So they are carpooling, but I know that
Mm-hmm.
these people are living, within a mile of the school.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think um, safe routes to school, it's a sort of international movement to get more kids safely walking and biking to school. I've spent a lot of time working on programs both with schools, with cities, um, and as part of the state government in a previous role. And, you know, I'd say the main way that CalBike is involved in that movement is pushing for better infrastructure in our cities, and improving policy around providing safe infrastructure, and really upping those standards, especially on routes to school. Because one of the, there are surveys that are done by schools across the country, that are accessible through the National Center for Safe Routes to School. And really what we see at schools throughout the country is people's number one concern is safety. People are, afraid to let their children ride their bikes or walk to school, whether that's by themselves or with an adult. One adult, or as part of, I think bike trains and bike buses have
bike
become,
buses. Yeah, I like that
yeah,
term.
more popular in everyday culture now. And those are excellent, but there's still the concern that the roads aren't safe, which paradoxically is often because the folks driving their children to school in big SUVs. As we
Right.
see, my side tangent here, there's data showing that increasing car size, the increase of the height of the hood of a car, especially on our larger SUVs and trucks, You know, I'm 5'2", and there are quite a few vehicles out there that come up to here on me if I'm standing
Right.
crossing the street. And it's just like, you are not going to survive that hitting you if it's going more than a few miles an hour at the center of gravity where it hits you. But anyway, you know, that's a big contributor. Um, but really infrastructure, getting facilities built, and whether that's, you know, protected bikeways, so with, you know, a physical barrier between the bicycle lane and the travel lane where cars drive, whether it's those, whether it's paths that are sort of sidewalk level, sort of multi-use paths where people can walk and bike, really, or, you know, some neighborhood streets where having kids ride in the road with an adult is acceptable, because it is lower speed and lower volume, and maybe there's signage up that indicates that it's a facility, but really increasing those throughout our communities, making sure money is going, you know, really putting our money where our priorities are. Cal Bike recently, you know, we know that the state of California has a large budget deficit this year, but there's no transportation budget deficit, right? A lot of the funding, you know, we all know about the Infrastructure Act, you know, all of these federal transportation dollars are still coming, and there is a great amount of flexibility in how a lot of that money can be spent. And Cal Bike put a letter out to the governor along with partners, both in December, and we put out some more communications recently, really, you know, suggesting ways that are fully within the ability of our state to sort of direct funding away from, you know, car focused infrastructure, away from adding capacity to roadways, and really focusing on the infrastructure that will help people be safer when they bike and when they walk, improve the availability of transit, and, you know, really align funding with our state's climate priorities. You know, we know the governor has a lot of information out about how the state needs to reduce impacts of climate change, reduce vehicle miles traveled, you know, do all these things. And we need our transportation funding, and our, you know, our policy there to align with those priorities. And you know, we're asking that the funding flexibility that's available be used so that more money is going to active transportation. So that's really one of the big ways Cal Bike is involved in helping more kids ride to school. You know, I think another consideration, land use is a huge part of this issue. You know, I'll go back to the neighborhood I grew up in and the neighborhood I live in now. Grid street network. You know, I have an elementary school 2 blocks away from me. We are separated by a wide high-speed road that used to be a state highway, so that's a whole nother story. But, you know, a lot of our newer communities, a lot of our suburbs have the street networks where it might be half a mile as a crow flies to get to the school, but maybe you need to go 2 miles actually on the street network to get there. And so, you know, some communities have been putting bicycle and pedestrian cut-throughs where the land is available. Some communities have been good at getting an off-road trail network available for folks to get to those school sites, so they don't have to do that roundabout driving around the community to get there. But really making sure that our land use reflects our needs to get from point A to point B and not rely on a car, because they're really linked. They have a great impact on our health, and you know, really thinking about that. And that can be another reason why folks are driving their kids to school is, you know, I can't walk. The thought is I can't walk a half an hour to go somewhere that's going to take me 5 minutes in my car because I'm going this big circuitous route to get there. So that's, you know.
What's the general temperature then? You said, so there's just all these dollars that are available and there's a lot of flexibility. What is the general temperature in terms of people willing to actually invest, rather than throw you a bone and say, okay, we'll do it and we can cross it off our list, you know, really actually changing the mindset? Or do you feel like you're pushing a rock uphill?
You know, the last legislative season, the budget also, so this year the governor's draft budget has a huge cut for the active transportation program, which funds a lot, a majority of our transportation, our active transportation infrastructure in California. A similar suggestion was made in the draft in 2023, and CalBike, along with our partners, were successful in clawing back that money and maintaining the active transportation fund. So we know in the past we've been able to work with other nonprofit organizations, with legislators throughout the state. There are a number of legislators who are very strong and focused on active transportation, among other, important concerns. I'll, call out Senator Weiner, Senator Friedman, Assemblymember Lee. There are quite a few, many that, being the new director to CalBike, I'm not familiar with everyone that we work with yet, but, I know there are a lot of folks who care about this deeply. And, really our role is helping get the voices of other organizations and communities throughout the state to the Capitol, so that we can, make the case why this is important and why we can't allow a budget deficit to roll back our progress on active transportation infrastructure. We don't have the time. The time is now to make these changes for for our communities. There's an epidemic of traffic violence that's harming people walking and biking, and for the climate.
Yeah. And general health too. You think about obesity and adolescents and just getting out on your bike and getting back and forth to school would be enough for a lot of these kids. And also, just your mind.
Mental health.
Yeah, it takes you to a different place if you never experience it. Might open doors that otherwise would remain closed if without that opportunity to do something like that. So we spent a fair amount of time talking about infrastructure, but there's also like some incentives, right, to get people going on bikes. And there's the e-bike incentive that's recently launched. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so the California e-bike incentive program, which I believe is in the soft launch now and should be launched widely very soon, hopefully. But it's a program of the California Air Resources Board, who also, administer such things as the electric vehicle rebates. So it is targeted at lower income California residents. I believe you need to be under 300% of the federal poverty level, which is not very much money. Right. The poverty level does not reflect actual poverty, but that's a whole different conversation. Right. And really it's targeting, I believe it, if you are at the lowest income level and you live in one of the specific communities that's been identified by the state as being extremely disadvantaged, you essentially could get a decent quality e-bike entirely covered. It's a point of sale program. So the retailers have registered to be vendors for the program, and consumers go to this website. It's not open broadly for applications yet, but they go to this website, they submit their qualification documents, and they're basically issued a voucher that they take to the retailer. And so the cost of the rebate is just taken off right at the point of sale. So they don't have to have the money up front to pay for the whole cost of the e-bike. And so they can get a very low cost e-bike. And really, the idea here is that, many people can have great mobility gains from getting an e-bike. It means you can carry more things, you can go longer distances. Maybe if you're less able-bodied, you're able to get on a bike and power yourself at all. And you're able to maybe get better shopping or cart your kid to their activities. And it can really substitute for a car for many families. In my house we have one car and we have one e-bike, and we figure out what works for what tasks we need to do. And the e-bike we have fits me at 5'2", and it fits my husband at 5'9". And the range can be, a family can share one of these if they need to. And really it'll get more bikes in the hands of more people. We've been very excited, and we did a lot of advocacy around making sure the program is correctly targeted. We're very invested in making sure it's successful. We'd like We'd like to see more incentives for e-bikes. I know historically Cal Bike has worked in the past to help to try to get e-bikes eligible for other incentive programs. There are other funding sources that traditionally go to electric vehicles, and making the argument that the money would go a lot further if you added e-bikes to that list. That was unsuccessful, but this program, we were part of a coalition, leading a coalition that got a lot of additional funding added to this e-bike incentive round. So we hope to see many success stories with folks adopting, getting e-bikes and being able to ride them.
Yeah, we brought this up. I think Mike and I were talking about this before, because we had seen an article that you had posted, not you per se, but the California Bike Coalition had posted about the success of the Colorado program. And I think the headline of this article was, more states should follow suit. Was the Colorado program very income based? I mean, does it mean that the average person necessarily, I don't know if that's the right term, could just go and get it, or is it all very much lower income, as you mentioned, poverty level type thing? I just kind of
I will admit I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to look it up and get back to you.
No.
I'm not as familiar with the Colorado program. I know that the state of California has
Your
made.
bio said everything, so I
I should update that.
This is the cycle jerk part of the podcast. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. You're getting that right now.
The state of California has legislated that a lot of our funding programs specifically need to target disadvantaged communities.
Okay.
And they have there are a number of different data indicators that go into what a disadvantaged community is and who a disadvantaged person is. And so this program being targeted to disadvantaged communities, I think, is part of that broader investment strategy. And it also, is a way that the state is working towards making it right that many of our disadvantaged communities have not been invested in the same way that our more advantaged communities have over the past 80, 100, 150 years, the entire history of the state of California. I'm sure we've all heard of redlining and a lot of the different ways that broadly communities of color, low-income communities have not been invested in. And so this is, that targeting is one way of working to undo that damage.
Is there maybe an opportunity for non-e-bike? Because I think Dave touched on it earlier, and we've been talking about riding to schools, and a lot of my generation, we rode our bikes to school, and a lot of us still ride to this day because we found it to be beyond just a mode of transportation or whatever. We're inspired to still do it. And I think if you can plant those seeds early, I think that they're more likely to grow, and that could really help us change. And there are not a lot of kids e-bikes out there, and really a kid probably doesn't need an e-bike for the most part, so is there maybe some opportunity to maybe try to develop programs that would go beyond just e-bikes?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Right now, what I can say is that many of our local bike organizations, again, I'll use the example of Sacramento Area Bicycle Advocates, they have a number of programs that help connect people with bikes, including, getting donations of old bikes. You come in and you spend some time helping to restore that bike and get it operational with the help from the folks that work there, and then that bike becomes yours. Right. And so there are a number of programs like that run by our great partners throughout the state to help connect adults and kids with traditional non-electric bikes. And so I think that's one way. I don't know of a state level program, but I think that's a great idea. I think getting more people on bikes is a great use of a lot of these funding programs. I will say that one thing Cal Bike works on is helping to get bike education into schools. I think that getting all kids, if we could get all kids to have some level of on the bike experience in, you know, in that sort of 3rd to 6th grade period when they're sort of old enough to have the perception of traffic in, you know, their brains have developed enough and young enough to really be able to absorb it, that we would end up with adults who were more attuned to bicycling as a mode of transportation, open to using it, and better drivers around cyclists as well. And
Yeah.
so, you know, there's a lot of challenges there around educational requirements and the hours of instruction. And, you know, I'm not an education policy expert, but I know that, you know, it can be a challenge to get those programs into schools. And I would, you know, we've been sort of noodling on what sort of partnerships we'd need um, to get that sort of thing in place.
I think
Yeah.
that's fantastic. I mean, you know, it just, there's so many other things that they're addressing, you know, right, bullying, mental health, you know, all this stuff, these programs that are getting put in for very good reasons. But this is when you think about physical, mental health and the climate, you know, this has got to be right up there in terms of importance. And you know, I have in the past, I've been a substitute teacher, and a fair number of kids, I'm kind of dissing on them a little bit, but a fair number of kids do ride their bikes. But there was that I was aware of any kind of formal education process to teach the parents about safe ways to ride there. That's just, these kids happened to ride their bike, or their parents made them ride their bike, but there wasn't any formal program within the schools to teach them of the benefits and the
Mhm.
safe way to do it, and the impact.
Yeah, there are a lot of excellent programs that unfortunately are somewhat piecemeal. So the Safe Routes to School movement that I talked about before, there are a number of resources that are available both specific to California and nationwide through the state's Active Transportation Resource Center that has California specific information on how to promote walking and biking in school. And then nationally, the National Center for Safe Routes to School has sort of more nationwide specific or general information about that. And both of them have toolkits for, you know, parents or educators who'd like to start programs in their school. And so there are a lot of these programs in, you know, some Solano County is an example where the Solano Transportation Authority actually runs a countywide program in partnership with the public health department, delivering that type of education in schools throughout the county. The city of Davis and Yolo County has a similar program. But throughout the state, you know, it really depends on funding. There's not often a lot of funding to sustain these programs. And so in many communities, it's more of a, you know, maybe some parents get together and start one of these programs, or the local bike advocacy group might have a program and come do some bike education. Bike rodeos are one type
Oh
of
yeah.
event where you can get kind of a one-off really sort of festival environment where kids get on a bike. Sometimes they have helmet giveaways and they really learn some of those bike skills. They set up sort of an obstacle course, so they learn how to steer a little bit better and learn some traffic considerations. And so it is sort of piecemeal at this point, and we would love to see more of that done really at a wide scale.
You brought up the word funding, and I'm backtracking a little bit, but it's interesting that they said that they wouldn't take money from the bucket they would include the money that was intended for EVs to go into, you know, I mean, that's frustrating to me in the sense that it kind of speaks to that whole mindset, the car mindset versus the bike mindset. And look, I've said this a million times, that I don't think you'll see mass adoption of e-bikes until you get good quality ones under $1,500, right? I mean, because you know, $3,500, 4,000 is expensive, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper than a $55,000 car. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
That can be used for, I'm just going to say, you know, 80% of the same thing. You could go to the grocery store on it. You could go to school. You could visit a friend, you could, whatever the case may be. I just think get your hair cut,
Right.
Mhm.
And, I think one of that is access to why the targeting of the e-bike incentive program is helpful at the lower income levels because, you know, maybe a lower income person is not buying that $55,000 car, but the car that they are buying, they are probably able to access credit, right? The types
Hmm.
of credit that are available to buy a car um, come at a much lower price point than the types of credit. If you don't have that 5,500, 3,500, whatever the cost of that quality e-bike is up front, you're putting it on a credit card. The interest rate on that credit card is much higher than it would be
Great
for
point. Great
a
point.
car purchase. And that's really a challenge to get more people to adopt e-bikes because it's kind of funny to think that a $3,000 e-bike is a luxury item, but a $50,000 car isn't, um, because of that price point difference. But in the day-to-day budget for someone, um,
Right.
being able to access
That's
that
huge.
affordably can be a
Yeah,
challenge.
that's a great analogy. Yep. Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, we've been talking a lot about roads,
Mhm.
infrastructure, bike incentive, but there was just something on your uh, calbike.org about off trail, on trail advocacy as well, right? With e-bikes, are you guys involved in off road as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think off-road facilities. So, primarily I'll think of that as the technical term is class one, so multi-use path that are open to people walking or biking, can be a great way to get a transportation network that can also be used for recreation. It has fewer intersections with motor vehicle traffic, so it's more comfortable for most people. It's the type of place where someone might feel comfortable letting their child get to school by themselves because maybe there's only two big intersections and there's more bike or walking traffic, and those are really, when you look at it, we were talking about Europe earlier. When you look at these other countries that have a much bigger mode share for bicycles, a lot of them have facilities that are completely separate from motor vehicle traffic to allow
Right.
people to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And, in the US, we have not prioritized that, and we have not, in a large way, moved to reallocating road space so that we can, have those facilities outside of the roadway. In many suburbs, you can kind of get them, whether it's along a body of water or kind of a lot of these places have these nice meandering um, grass areas that, pieces of it can be used for transportation facilities.
Okay, I may have misunderstood then, and when I read, I thought this was specifically about a mountain biking, and I didn't know if you had been involved in that. It was Bill who was advocating for e-bikes on mountain trails, and if it was just an article that you were publishing, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. So
No, we do publish a lot of things from around about bike culture and different ways people use bikes. So that was probably one of those. But we do have, we have partners we speak with in kind of the mountain biking area and others that, when it intersects with legislation, we like to have conversations about their perspectives. I know with mountain bikes and with e-bikes, there's a lot of considerations around, um, you know, safety and classification of bicycles and
yeah,
and making sure that that folks are accessing the correct equipment.
okay,
Yeah, certainly in the bike world, it's been very challenging, the e-bike integration into the trail system and the parks and, BLM
Mhm.
or, you know, what it's different by region, but some areas are a lot more accepting to it, and then other areas are a lot more resistant. And even within the cycling community, there's a lot more acceptance now for mountain bikes than there ever has been. But initially, the mountain bike community was kind of pushing back at the new e-bike rider.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff to sort out. And I know uh, there's this issue of closing speed because, you know, going uphill on an e-bike, you can actually go quite a bit faster than somebody that's pedaling a normally aspirated bike. Acoustic bike, yeah. So that can create a hazard, right? Because people going downhill tend to go fast, and then somebody coming uphill is now going much faster than you would ordinarily, and there could be issues like that. And you know, in other communities, I know there are directional trails. I think that's a really good idea, but we haven't really adopted that here anywhere that I'm aware of. Are
Get
you
on
in-
that. Get on that, will you, Kendra? You just get on that.
You know, and those are similar concerns that we hear about, you know, your basic paved off-road paths as well.
Yeah.
You know, I've worked in communities where you have folks who like to walk on those trails, being very uncomfortable with, you know, acoustic with regular bikes, being, you know, a big speed differential. Anytime you get a speed differential, you're going to have people start to feel uncomfortable, and it's really about the etiquette for that particular system. You know, we've seen some places, the big trail here where I live is the American River Parkway. It's a beautiful system. It has a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. Do people always follow it? No, but you know, it kind of instills it. It's very prominent on the trail, both on the pavement and on signage. And it really sort of, as a bicyclist, when I use it, I feel like, okay, I need to moderate my speed when I'm near other people, right? If I'm out on the trail and no one's out there, you know, there may not be as much of it's, you know, back to that, how do we perceive our safety? And we will go faster if the conditions seem relevant to it. But, you know, you get out there and you might go a little bit faster, but when you get near one of the parks that intersects with the trail, you know, there may be kids starting out in front of the trail or people walking their dogs. And it really is a multi-use system. So we do hear similar concerns. We've been hearing those. It's the same concerns. It just keeps, keeps moving to a different group of people. And then, you know, regular bicyclists, say e-bicyclists, even outside of mountain biking are going too fast, and, you know, we should ban them. And it's all about predictability and making sure that we're sharing spaces.
Sharing is a great, because here we are, if you will, I'm whining that there isn't more infrastructure for bikes and all this is, you know, but the flip side to that is there has to be responsibility on the part of cyclists too. So if you're granted this, right? I posted something, and I know I haven't made many friends on it, but there was someone posted a picture, a non-cyclist posted that on this day in 1914, the first traffic light was installed in like Dayton, Ohio, right? And it was a historical thing. And I kind of reposted it and said, yeah, cyclists have been, and cyclists have been blowing through them ever since, right? Because I think you're right. The Iron Horse Trail is here. And I know people that ride on the Iron Horse Trail, and they don't moderate their speed, you know? And it's, so I think there's a certain amount of, you know, if we're going to ask for something, I think we have to give something too. And that is the respect to the pedestrians and, you know, traffic rules.
Yeah, it is human nature though. You know, I mean, like you look at the freeways, you look at the city streets, people don't adhere to the laws to the letter, you know, and so I think that has to be factored into it too, you know, that we're not just these robots that are going to do
again, design, right?
Yeah, design, exactly.
You know, a big thing about infrastructure, and in all of these cases is it comes down to design. It comes down to what people feel comfortable and safe doing, and how aware they are of what other folks are going to be doing out there. You know, that same trail I was talking about, you know, I know a couple people who've crashed their bikes because someone came out of nowhere, a pedestrian came out of nowhere and at one of those turns, and, you know, they avoided the pedestrian, right, and were injured because of it. So I think a lot of it is just making our facilities have those predictable features that folks know. A new user is going to know, okay, there's a conflict point. I should slow down here. and, you know, be a little bit more aware. And then I can go back to my workout after that, or my, you know, whatever I'm doing out there.
Yeah.
And it really applies to everyone. And, you know, I think that brings us back to like bikes bring us joy. And, you know, really we want to get out there. We want everyone to get out there and have fun on their bike and feel free, and feel like they are going to successfully get where they want to go. And,
Yeah.
you know, we're all in that situation together of wanting that and making sure that everyone can do that.
No doubt. Well, listen, I think that, well, okay. Go ahead,
Are you
Dave.
gonna hang up on us, Mike? Do you have to go?
I was gonna say that's a perfect way to close
I know
because
it is.
it is.
It
But
is. But
go ahead, Dave.
I do have one more topic,
All
and
right, yeah.
I
We need
so
to be sensitive to Kendra's time also, you know.
and that's yeah.
Yes.
Well, just get that sound bite and just say it again. Being happy on bikes. We'll close after this part.
Okay.
But this concept within the cities of the shared vehicles, the scooters and the bikes. And so I was talking with Mike before. You know, I don't know what you're feeling on that, or what Cal Bike might be doing about, the coalition might be doing about that. I was just telling Mike, you know, conceptually I like it, but as I said to Mike, you know, people at the grocery store can't put their own shopping cart away, right? They just leave it in the middle, you know. And I go through the cities and I see them. Sometimes it's like a dumpster fire, and you know, there's just scooters laying all over the place. And conceptually I like it. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know what your feeling is on it. Scooters and shared bikes and that type of
Yeah.
thing.
You know, I think broadly, Cal Bike is supportive of vehicles of different types. You know, a bicycle is a vehicle, scooter's a vehicle. They're just small and people powered or slightly
Right.
electric powered. And we are in favor of things that increase folks' ability to move and, you know, help get people out of their cars and help them enjoy being out and transporting or having recreation. And I think that you can see a lot of trips be replaced, car trips be replaced by a shared vehicle like a scooter or a shared bike. When, you know, say someone takes transit one direction and decides to, you know, go somewhere else and just decides to come back on a bike, and it provides a great opportunity for, you know, maybe your trip, maybe you have different types of things you're doing on your trip, and that makes sense. A lot of cities have definitely had the challenge of parking. I know in a number of places, specific racks have been put up here locally in Sacramento. There are specific racks that were put up when bike share was first launched. In other places, there are sort of these, I feel like someone called them bird cages after the company Bird, which I think filed for bankruptcy recently.
Yeah,
But
right.
it's sort of a painted box on the ground that has like a picture or a little drawing of a scooter and a drawing of a bicycle, and it's for those dockless shared vehicles that don't need to be locked up to anything. You park them in that box. It's an area that's off of the main way of the sidewalk so that it's not in folks' ways, and it gets them kind of out of the way. And I think that, you know, some small things, when many people will park things correctly if they're given the appropriate space. Like you said, some people won't.
Right.
They won't think about others, and that's, you know, a challenge. But the more that we have those spaces available and sort of information out to folks, the better equipped we are. And you know, those systems can be a great way to get people access and also to get people exposed to e-bikes, right? They, you know, might
great point.
not know anyone personally that has an e-bike, and then you're able to rent one for, you know, for one trip, or, you know, get a subscription and rent, you know, use one on and off for a month and see how they like it and how it might fit in with their lifestyle and what they need. And, you know, it's a great way to kind of try that system out without the, you know, the expenditure of buying a bike that you're not sure how it would fit into your life. There have also been pilot programs of doing sort of the rent to own model of e-bikes, sort of an e-bike lending library. And you know, different cities are experimenting with different sort of shared or quasi shared models like that where people get access for a longer period of time. So, you know, it definitely can help, I think, introduce people to the joys of riding an e-bike and getting them, you know, thinking about how using that for transportation might work in their life.
There you go. The joys of e-bikes. There you go, Mike. You got your happy note now. You got your
All
happy
right.
note.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kendra, for joining us today and all the work that you do. All of us cyclists and pedestrians, we all appreciate it. Is there a way to for our audience to somehow make a difference with calbike.org? Is it through voting,
Yeah.
or is there another way?
Yeah, you know, there are a number of ways to get involved. If you go to calbike.org, you know, we encourage folks to become members. That's calbike.org/join. We also have an email list that we send out an email every 2 weeks. We won't spam you, and it collects both, you know, things that Calbike is doing, as well as some of our partners, and really just the news around what legislation is going on, what you can do locally, whether it's, you know, talking to your city council member or you know, calling your state legislator. And so we will also occasionally send out emails a little bit more often if there's a state like a state bill that we're sponsoring that we'd like you to contact your legislator about, and really let you know on, you know, a more fast-paced basis when that's available. We often have sort of ways that you can just type in very quickly and do a letter off to your legislator as well. And so I encourage folks to sign up for that email list, and you'll get all that kind of communication from us. But yeah, vote, ask people what their stance is on bicycling and active transportation. When they're already in office, you know, encourage them to allocate agency resources to transportation, to bikes, to sidewalks, and, you know, really keep folks accountable.
Yeah,
Awesome.
great. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And
Thank you for having me.
all right.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for all you do, your whole team.
Great.
Thank you.